In this video, I'm working on a heads-up tool rack. Thought it would be pretty cool to have a tool rack that slides down, and it's over my head so I have easy access to my most frequently used tools. I usually keep the tools to the right of the bench, but it's on this chair and it kind of blocks access around the side. And a drawer full of tapes, and I like to move some of those up to the rack. I've got the slides mounted up on the rafter ties, so now it's just a matter of figuring out where to put the counterweight pulleys. So in order to do that, you'll see that I have a panel insulation. These are foam boards that I had installed a while back, and I gotta get in through that in order to get to the rafters themselves. You'll notice the way I installed the insulation. It's pretty unconventional, but I actually had to do this all in Are before the last winter. And it actually worked out pretty well. It does a good job of keeping the shop warm, and I made sure there's like a air gap. So normally you cut foam panels to place between the rafters, but in this case I just mounted them over to the rafters. It's faster and there are less cracks for cold air to kind of get through. Okay, so I'm cutting at an angle so that when I take these boards off, or rather the panels off, I can just kind of stick it back up in there. And here's what it looks like in there. So I'm gonna get some plywood and screw those to the rafters. Yeah, here we are in the side shed. So this was supposed to be a shed on the side of the garage, but it ended up becoming like a woodworking area. And it's nice because when you make dust, it doesn't get all over the metalworking machines, which can gum up your ways and other stuff. So yeah, wasn't planning on doing all this, but I'm glad I did. I don't do a lot of woodwork, and in fact, I'm not a woodworker at all. I'm just out here doing stuff to, this sort of stuff. Just making pretty basic cabinets and shelves and things like that for the shop or anything I need to do in the house. And now it's time to seal things back up. Before I use the spray foam gun, I always make sure to clean it. I've had issues in the past where it'll get clogged up if you don't clean it first. I really don't like using this stuff. It gets everywhere. You gotta have the accuracy of like a surgeon if you don't want to make a huge mess. Oh yeah, watch out for that. Okay, onto the handle. I'm just using electrical conduit And I need to bend radius on these so that it looks nice. Just using a standard conduit bender. Marking things up because I need to do the same on the other side, but I actually ended up not accounting for what was it, the first bend. So when I did the other side, it didn't quite come out exactly the same length. So I later on I ended up trimming it so that it fit onto the framing. You'll see that later. And here's the rack portion. So I usually tack before screwing because when you're drilling and screwing things like this together, it tends to creep and move on you. So the nail just kind of helps keep things in place. And the first test sliding, and it was at this point that I realized I think this thing will actually work. And also I added some extra support to the top cross beam. This plate will hold the rope, which attaches to the counterweight. And the top crossbar needs hooks to hold the pulleys. You'll notice everything's kind of offset to the to one side here, and that's because my workbench is actually not in the center of the shop. So I had to kind of offset things to line up as closely centered to the workbench as possible. Testing out the rope and pulleys, and it was really hard to pull this thing up. So I couldn't really tell if it was the weight, but I know that this rack is not that heavy yet. So I could only assume that it was the rope and those pulleys. But I just kind of moved on and built this box as the counterweight, and now I'm just filling it with sand. So this ended up being around 35 pounds. And just testing, it really doesn't feel good, and the weight actually kind of hits the the rack as I'm pushing it back up. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna have to move this weight. But then after thinking about it some more, I figured, why not move the weight somewhere out of the way? And That'll reduce the chances of this thing breaking and then falling on my head over the workbench. So you can see here a clear line of sight to behind the MR1, and so it's in the back corner here. So that's what I'm doing, moving it to the back corner. And now for a fix on this pulley situation. So I picked these up at Home Depot. They have a wider diameter, so I think that might alleviate a bit of the friction and tension. And then I also had this this steel cable, so I decided to use that instead of the rope. That'll help as well, hopefully, and actually be stronger. There's no room back here, so fortunately or unfortunately, I'm a small guy, so I fit in here pretty well. But a normal sized person would have a lot of trouble back here. I did at one point kind of hit my shoulder on the MR1 there, and that hurt. All right, here's the counterweight in the back. I'm just kind of I'm pulling the rack down, and that's moving the counterweight back up. So you can see things are kind of working. It's very squeaky too, so these pulleys, they're noisy. So I thought they had ball bearings in there, but nope, it's just a bushing. A little grease will probably fix that, but I actually ordered already these ball bearing pulleys. So those arrived, and I only got those because I didn't think I would find the other pulleys. And now things are nice and smooth. And I'm being a little rough on purpose because I'm just kind of testing out to see if anything will bind up or whatnot. And now onto the printing of the clamps and things to hold the tools onto the rack. And I moved this guy down to the basement so that it wouldn't make too much noise overnight and wake everyone up. So these clamps hold the drivers. They went through a few iterations. I ended up making these little like wing things to kind of support the drivers better. I've got the Milwaukee driver and the Makita driver, so they're slightly different in shape, and this allowed me to have pretty much the same base, but with slightly different kind of handle support in order to keep these things on. I don't want these falling on my head while I'm working, so I really, these went through quite a bit of iteration and wanted to make sure that they securely hold those drivers up there. And now just a random parts bin. I made like a little dovetail for these two different parts, and that's so I could print this part at this current vertical orientation. So it's a little wobbly, but might fix that later, but it's good enough for now. All right, here we go. It's all done, and I'll probably add more stuff as I need to put more tools on there later, but here it is. All right, see you guys in the next one.